Jeff, on to slightly more serious matters, not far from Pakistan, up in Afghanistan. Well, not in Afghanistan, but in relation to Afghanistan. Cricket Australia have announced this evening that their proposed 3-match T20I series that was scheduled for August this year in the FTP, this is the men, not the women, of course, because there is no Afghanistan women's team, has been jettisoned. So in the press release we got sent out, it's something serious with CA when it says Cricket Australia media statement and no other detail. Anyway, that was the framing. Yeah. So I immediately opened it up, and they cited a similar passage of advice to what was relayed last year when they decided not to go there during the IPL. So effectively that with human rights and women and girls education in Afghanistan having the word they used deteriorated, marked deterioration is in the release. They have said they won't play bilateral cricket against Afghanistan. They did play in the World Cup last year, famously. I thought that was a bit cute. I mean, I know the ICC. I'm still curious as to whether they would have considered boycotting that Afghanistan game had they already secured their semi-final berth. I suppose we'll never know.
I don't think they would have because there'll be other tournaments where that might not be the case, right? So they can't afford to set the precedent of boycotting when they don't need the points, because they may then be in a situation next time around when they do need the points. So I think that's I think that's never going to happen at this stage. They'll use the fig leaf that, we're part of a collective thing, and so we need to respect the collective and thus play all the games that we're scheduled to play, using the same excuse that India and Pakistan used to play each other inside the World Cup but not outside the World Cup.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's certainly the framework they'll use to argue it if it's ever put to them publicly. So, look, things will never... I mean, it's not as though pressure applied by Cricket Australia specifically is going to change the nature of the government in Afghanistan. So this will be an ongoing situation, I suppose. The Australian government have clearly been involved. It says at the end that they thank the government for their support in making this decision, and that was certainly the case last year when the government came out and was quite strident in its commentary around Afghanistan in relation to cricket. So... look, if I wanted to be super cynical, I could say that, look, I wonder what the team would have looked like even if they were playing a fixture or 3 fixtures after the T20 World Cup. It's not in that context. I mean, it's not as though they're gearing up to play a tournament that's in that part of the world or anything like that. They would have just played a T20 World Cup only 2 months prior, and in August that's the earning part of the year, shall we say, for the white ball players. They'll have the ML, they'll have obviously the IPL, then the World Cup, then they move on to the MLC, and my understanding is that pretty much everyone is playing in that this year. All of the white ball superstars are going to cash in America. There's the CPL, there's the 100 in August, and then there's a white ball trip that Australia is scheduled for in September in England. So some of them might have a holiday in the States after the MLC, but I suppose that's a moot point because the series was never going ahead anyway.
Yeah, look, they mentioned the Australian government 3 times in 3 paragraphs in this statement. So the between the lines thing to me says very strongly that this is an order. They've been told they're not to play bilateral series against Afghanistan. And we've talked through making the case for this, and there is a strong ethical case in support of this. I'm sure there'll be some people who'll object to it, but I think that's a relatively hard case to make. But the part that doesn't stack up is this kind of bullshit upbeat optimism that they talk about it being a postponement. They're talking about determining what actions could be taken to support the resumption of bilateral matches. They will continue to engage with the Afghanistan Cricket Board in anticipation of improved conditions. None of that's happening. None of that's happening. We all know none of that's happening. The Taliban are not going to be like, oh, Nick Hockley's on the phone and he's got some constructive suggestions for us to improve our governance. Let's put him on speaker and see what he has to say to the room. Nothing good is going to come of this. There is no latitude for improvement here. It's the fucking Taliban, right? We know what they're about because we saw them on episode 1 of the Taliban, and then after they were renewed for a second season, it hasn't got any better. So I don't understand why they're kind of playing this ridiculous charade of pretending that things do have any capacity to get better. the upshot of this is you're not playing bilateral cricket against Afghanistan ever. It's not going to happen. Australia will not play Afghanistan in bilateral series, and that's indefinite. That's indeterminate until such time as an extremely old and stubborn regime disappears. So, look forward to in 200 or 300 years' time, maybe Australia will play Afghanistan.
Yeah, like it's no laughing matter, but it is quite funny, isn't it? The idea of Mike Baird jumping on the blower and going, "Oh, we're going to dispense with our plans for the caliphate because Mike Baird's gave us a buzz." So anyway, that does seem.
Check out what I did with King's Cross. You guys might be into this sort of idea. Maybe we share a few conceptually share a few philosophical frameworks. Yeah, where's the common ground there? There isn't any. It's not going to happen.
I quite like Mike. I want to get him on the show, so don't take it seriously if you're listening to this.